Deathrite Shaman is one of the most powerful cards printed in Magic's 30-year history, and it's been banned in Modern for an entire decade. But Modern is a completely different format than it was in 2014. It's time to free Deathrite Shaman from its prison and unban it. Why is Deathrite Shaman even banned in the first place? Looking back, the official reasons are hilarious. Different flavors of black-green decks have recently been among the best performing decks in Modern. Despite what we Jund players want to pretend to believe, that hasn't been true for many years. The best decks in Moderns are focused on explosiveness and overwhelming power, not casting 3-drops trying to grind out a 2-for-1 exchange. The article goes on to say that normally playing mana acceleration comes at the cost of playing cards that are less powerful in the late game. Deathrite Shaman, however, is powerful at all stages of the game. While this is technically true, as Deathrite Shaman is not an embarrassing top deck in the late game, the definition of powerful comes into question. Paying 1 mana to exile a card from a graveyard and get a 2-point life swing simply isn't something that is overwhelmingly powerful by today's standards. The format is simply different than it was in 2014. So what's changed over the last decade? For starters, Dark Horse was the #2 Song of the Year. But also, Modern is a completely unrecognizable format compared to 2014. Aside from the fetch lands and lightning bolts, almost none of the cards that were played today were played back then. Remember how the ban article noted black-green decks? One reason why they were so popular at the time is because of how good Verdant Catacombs was. The allied fetch lands weren't even Modern legal. That's right, this was so long ago that if you wanted to play a Grixis deck, you couldn't play Bloodstained Mire nor Polluted Delta. Another thing that's changed in Modern is the removal suite. It is dramatically better than it was back then, especially when dealing with 1-drops. Clear back when Deathrite Shaman was still legal, Lightning Bolt was really the only good way to deal with a 1-drop creature. Otherwise, you had to path a creature on turn 1, which seems like a great way to fall behind and just lose the match, or you had to trade down on mana with a Lightning Helix, Abrupt Decay, or Terminate. Trading down on mana so early in the game puts you so far behind, especially if you're on the draw and they've already used their Deathrite Shaman for mana ramp. The lack of playable, efficient removal made Deathrite Shaman a complete nightmare to deal with. In today's world, you have Fatal Push, Prismatic Ending, and Unholy Heat. Now you might be saying to yourself, hey, if Deathrite Shaman was such a pain to deal with and such a big part of the meta, people could have just adjusted their decks to have more options to deal with Deathrite Shaman, like adding a Shock to your deck. After all, it's not that different than Unholy Heat. But of course, that's not true. Unlike Shock, Unholy Heat has the ability to turn into a 1-mana Terminate in the late game, thus having the flexibility to deal with bigger threats. In addition to all the great 1-mana removal spells, there are also many more expensive spells that, yes, they do trade down on mana, but they're very powerful and flexible and have other reasons to be in your deck than just to deal with 1-mana creatures. These are cards like Archmage's Charm, Stomp, Kolaghan's Command, Fire, and Brazen Borrower. Removal in Modern is simply so much better than it was clear back in 2014 that having strong, cheap threats just simply isn't that big of a deal anymore. So if we were to get Deathrite Shaman unbanned in Modern, how good would it even be? Many people like to discuss aspects of this card and in doing so, find ways to nerf it. Why does it cost hybrid mana rather than just green, allowing base black decks to play it? Why does it also eat creatures from the graveyard? Why does it drain for 2 damage rather than just 1? And why does it have that extra point of toughness? While these are all great questions to explain the details of card design and explore why this card was so powerful, the reality is that in today's world, none of it really matters. The card doesn't need any of these nerfs in order to be appropriate for Modern. Yes, the card would be good and it would see play. But in today's world, with all the Modern Horizons sets and the overall power creep of the format, it wouldn't be a widespread card that would just be slammed as an automatic 4 of in every single deck. Don't believe me? Well, it's legal in Timeless, and it's just a card. It's a good card, and sure, sometimes you see it punch above its weight class and win a game all on its own, but often it simply trades with a removal spell, or it simply attacks and blocks as a creature with bad stats because there are no lands in the graveyards, or because there are simply better ways to spend your mana than activating its drain abilities. What do you all think? Is Deathrite Shaman actually too powerful for Modern? Now, just because a card won't necessarily be an oppressive powerhouse doesn't mean that the card should be unbanned. One of the biggest factors when considering whether or not a card should be legal is the classic question, is it fun? And I'd say compared to most of Modern, yeah, it is. Modern is a format full of unfair decks like Amulet Titan, Yawgmoth, Cascade decks, even Goblin Charbelcher and Storm. Or you can get wrecked by Scam or any of the dozens of decks that run 4 to 7 copies of the One Ring. Now, I'm not complaining about all these decks. Okay, maybe I am a little bit. But fair decks that actually cast creature spells and engage in combat have always been fighting an uphill battle in Modern. Giving a bump to these decks that actually engage with the opponent and don't just play solitaire and try to win the game on turn 3 seems like a fun format to me. Having a little main deck graveyard hate in the format is never a bad thing. And I hate to break it to you, but Scavenging Ooze just ain't cutting it anymore. Now, I could be completely wrong. Maybe people will just jam Deathrite Shaman into 4 and 5 color grindy decks that are just miserable to play against. Unfair decks can be awful to play against, but the pendulum can definitely swing too far in the other direction with decks that just take infinite game actions and have infinite value. And if that's the case, you can just ban it again. Heck, you can even put that in the ban announcement so people don't get too upset if they go out and buy the card. Not that it's that expensive anyway, but just say in the announcement, this is a testing period, proceed with caution, we might ban it again. Well, honestly, I don't think that would be the case, and we would need to see this card get rebanned. Over the years, we've had 10 cards unbanned in Modern. Of those cards, 1 had to be banned again, which was not surprising for most people. Other than that, only 3 of them see any play in Modern. The other 6 are just collecting dust in trade binders all over the world. Okay, fine, maybe Wild Nicot will see some play in Zoo, but it probably shouldn't. If that track record tells us anything, we can at least experiment and test the unbanning of Deathrite Shaman. If my dreams come true and Wizards does unban Deathrite Shaman, I'm going to be sleeving those up and playing them immediately. Make sure you don't waste money on sleeves, but buy them the smart way, as shown in this video.